Today I'm going to teach you 6 techniques that every church drummer should know, and then we're going to take each one and apply it to a song so that next time you play at your church, you know exactly what to do. And I pulled this lesson from my full church drummer training camp course on my online drum school, DBO Academy. Let's dive in. Now, the first technique that every church drummer should know is actually what sets them apart from almost every other drummer. You see, way too many drummers only know how to play at one volume, and typically that's very loud. But the best church drummers know how to play at many volumes, and it all starts with the quiet build. Here's how to play it. All right, so for verse 1, we are starting with one of the first levels of building, and that is by simply playing on the floor tom. But this is actually a groove. It's not actually a build, but we're kind of building with our groove slowly over time. So what you're gonna be doing is playing straight 16th notes on the floor tom, just alternating between your hands, right, left, or if you're left-handed, left, right. But the important thing here is the accent pattern and how you're playing the floor tom. Basically, I'm treating all of my notes almost as ghost notes on the floor tom, maybe slightly louder, but my sticks aren't coming up much past 4 or 5 inches from the drum. Then on the accent patterns, I'm not playing a big 12-inch stroke. I may be only coming up about 7 to 8 inches off the drum, just to add a little bit more texture. And we have a lot of weak hand accents, starting with the of beat 1, then on the of beat 3, and then beat 4 with your dominant hand. So then we're just throwing in a kick drum on beat 1, and that sounds like this. Then next up, we basically have another verse, so it's on us to make this sound more interesting. So we're essentially just going to build this groove up a little bit more, but keeping the same foundation. So we're gonna stick with those 16th notes on the floor tom, but that first accent with your weak hand on the of beat 1, we're gonna move to the rack tom to add a little bit more sound, build those dynamics up a little bit. Then the big thing here is we are going to add a snare drum on beat 4. So we've got that worship drummer halftime feel here. But the only thing to note about that is before you come down on beat 4, I want you to play the snare drum and the floor tom together. So in order to do that, we need to play a double note on the and of beat 3. So 3E and 4. So you can come down and get a really strong note out of those. We're basically just gonna repeat that, and then the only other thing is we are adding an extra kick on beat number 3. Altogether, that sounds like this. If you want to be a church drummer that continually gets asked to play back week after week, well then pay attention, because it's time to learn a technique that makes almost any worship chorus sound better. Now this is hugely important because the chorus is one of the most powerful moments in every worship song. But be careful, because a lot of drummers end up thinking they always need a big cymbal-driven halftime beat for a powerful chorus, but too many drummers ignore a groove like this. All right, now we've reached the chorus where we can continue to build dynamically, but we are still staying on the toms. We have 4 on the floor, so that means quarter notes on the kick drum. And then we have that interesting, unique tom pattern with the floor and the rack tom played both together at the same time. Then we are going to stick with the snare drum on beat 4, but the unique thing about this is that we are hitting the crash cymbals with those chord changes. You can hear the song go do, do, do on those 2 chord changes, da, da. I know I have a lovely singing voice. We want to accent those with crashes. So that's going to happen on beat number 1 and beat number 4 repeatedly. And this is a quick note to remember for any live playing scenarios. If you are noticing that the guitars and the bass are making very specific chord changes, think of those as rhythms and think of how you can best accent those rhythms. This is a perfect example. So now let's play this chorus all together and hear what it sounds like. Unfortunately, in my time, I have seen a lot of church drummers be really stuck in their playing, really wanting to play on stage, but not being able to break through the barriers to get there. I think a huge reason for this is that a bunch of other sites and YouTube in general is just pumping scattered information into drummers' brains to the point where they don't know what to focus on to get better. But I've been able to help so many of my students go from completely stuck in their drumming to performing at their church week after week with confidence through my online drum school, DBO Academy. Inside, you'll find a clear, personalized drumming path that takes you from exactly where you are in your drumming right now, and it guides you step by step to level up your drumming fast. Now, if you want to level up your drumming so you can play with confidence, I'm going to give you 15 days to try it out completely for free. Click the link in the description below and I'll see you inside. Now, what if I told you there's a technique that worship drummers could use that could change the feel of all of your grooves with just a single note? Well, this technique exists and I personally use it all the time in my drumming and especially in my church drumming. And I see all the best worship drummers using this as well, so you should really know this. It's called a Buzzstroke. This is simply where, with pressure, you dig the tip of your stick into the drum head. So you kind of get this quick bounce sound. All right, now for the next verse, we are finally moving over to the hi-hat and laying down like a real groove outside of the tom. So the bass here is going to be 8th notes on the hi-hat, and we're gonna continue with that snare drum on beat 4. But of course, there are variations here. At the end of both of these measures, we are going to add in a buzz stroke that's gonna lead into that kick drum on beat 1 really nicely. And then oftentimes after a buzz stroke, I like to throw in another ghost note afterwards. So we're throwing a ghost note on the E of beat 1 on both measures. Then on the hi-hat, we've got 3 notes on the and 4 on measure 1, and then we are throwing in an open hi-hat on the and of 3 on measure 2. Then we've got kind of a syncopated kick drum pattern that kind of matches the tom pattern that we were playing in the chorus. Let's hear what this groove sounds like all together. Now, if there's one thing you don't want to be, it's a boring church drummer. So this next technique is going to help you boost your creativity so you can really stand out in your church drumming. Now, you see a lot of the times church drummers will separate their tom grooves from their cymbal grooves, but the best ones can actually combine the two together to get a powerhouse grooves that instantly create something creative that has power and feel. Let's dive into how to do this. Then for chorus number 2, we are building on it by having that same halftime tom groove, but we are adding quarter notes on the ride. Outside of that, the only change that I made is after the 3rd note on the ride, I add a left on the rack and then a right on the floor tom afterwards. So that's the only time where the toms aren't played together. So let's hear what this variation sounds like. Then the song kind of ends with a really big verse, so I'm not gonna do too much different here. I'm gonna play what I played in verse number 3, where I was on the hi-hat, but just kind of laying into the cymbals a little bit more, because as you can tell, every single section of this song we've slowly made bigger, whether we're adding a snare drum, adding another kick drum, adding in some notes on the ride, or making things a little bit louder. The whole song is building, 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 which is really what a lot of church songs do. So this will set you up for success. But now let's put everything together and play the full song.
Now, if you want to try this whole church drummer training camp course totally for free, well then click the link in the description below to get 15 days free to my entire online drum school DBO Academy. Or you can learn the best church halftime grooves right here.